Welcome everyone to Daf Yomi, 1 week at a time. This is Masechet Bava Batra. This is our 16th class in this Masechet, and today we are going to be reviewing Daf 106 to 112. If I haven't mentioned it before, this is the longest Masechet in the Talmud, so after this, it's all going to be shorter than this, but we still have quite a way to go. Okay, so we are starting on Daf 106, and if you remember, the theme of these of the last few Mishnayot is when there is a sale, based on what you say, is the way that the the sale is defined, right? Meaning when the buyer agrees to what the seller is selling, it really depends what is the language that's used for the sale that will determine what is included in the sale. And last week we discussed this idea of, right, are you selling an exact piece of land or an approximate piece of land? If we say a certain size land, give or take, or exactly. So today our Mishnah on Daf 106 says, let's say a person says, I'm going to sell you this land with all of its landmarks and its borders. So then the Mishnah tells us it's as if he said approximately, right? Meaning we're not talking about a 50-acre piece of land. We're saying you see this land, it has these markers, it has these borders. That's what you're going to get. If the seller is off by less than a sixth of the agreed upon measurement, so then it's a valid sale. However, if it's more than a sixth, so then either the buyer has to pay for the extra land that he got or return the extra land, right? And if you remember, we've had this number a sixth before, right? This is called, this is the idea of like fraud. If it's more than a sixth, we say that that's already too much. And then we have to figure out either you return it or you pay for the extra. So if you paid attention, the Mishnah spoke about less than a sixth and more than a sixth. So of course, now the Gemara asks, what if it's exactly a sixth, right? Not less and not more. So either it's like, right? Either it's like less or it's like more, right? We have to figure it out, and you can't really learn from our Mishnah. And we have this numerous times in the Gemara where the Mishnah will give two sides of the spectrum, right? All the way to the to one side and all the way to the other side. And the Gemara always asks, what about that middle case? So now the Gemara is trying to figure it out, right? Let's say you gave a sixth, right? A sixth more or a sixth less. So then it's like was something that's called the evaluation of the judges, and it becomes a valid sale. So what does this mean, right? So now the Gemara tells us the case, a person, let's say, bought land, and he thought that it was 20 se'ah, right? It was a certain measurement, but it turns out that really it was 15 se'ah. Now, because he accepted it, so then he needs to keep it. So that's right. So then the Gemara says, well, wait a minute. Maybe when the person said that it's 20 se'ah, maybe it didn't mean actually, but the land is as good as 20 se'ah. Not that it was going to measure 20 se'ah, right? Meaning it will produce the amount of produce that a regular 20 se'ah field would produce, but it does it in a smaller amount, in 15. Now we have another case. We have brothers who are splitting an inheritance. And then as soon as the first brother draws his lot, right? Let's say they put it in a hat and they're like, okay, everyone's going to choose something. As soon as the first one chooses, so then everyone else acquires their land, right? Meaning as you divide it up, as soon as the first person gets their portion, so it's as if all the other brothers already acquired their land, right? And what's the point of this? That you can't return it afterwards. It's as if you already acquired it. And the Gemara says this is exactly the way the Jewish people divided up the land of Israel. If you remember when they came into Israel, so, and we're actually going to read about it next week in Zota Bracha, that every tribe is going to go into Israel, and every tribe is going to get a certain area in Israel. How did they decide who gets what? They actually drew lots. And the Gemara says this is the same idea. As soon as one tribe draws a lot, it's as if everyone else drew it already and you can't exchange anything. The Gemara says, well, the truth is that when they divided up the land, they also used the Urim v'Tumim. Urim v'Tumim was the priestly breastplate that had the stones. And what they would do is they would ask a question, and then different letters would light up in order to give an answer. So it's not exactly the same as what we've been discussing, but it's a little bit different, but it's the same idea. Since we're talking about brothers dividing up an estate, so now the Gemara gives another case. Two brothers split the estate of their father, and then all of a sudden another brother shows up. It seems that they didn't know he existed. He lived in a faraway land. So he shows up. So now there are two options of what could happen. One opinion is that it invalidates the original split. Everyone has to put their land back together, and now they split it three ways. Or another opinion is each brother gives the new brother a little piece of their land, but they get to keep most of what they had. Okay, so that's speaking about inheritance. Now the Gemara talks about partnerships, right? So let's say there are three partners that own land, and two partners go to court and they dissolve the partnership, right? They divide it up into three. So the Gemara says this is valid and it works, even though the third partner wasn't there. You do not have to start over. And here it was because the third partner, they had the third partner in mind, right? In the case of the new brother, when they originally split the land, they didn't know he even existed. But here they know that there's another partner. So when they split it, they have him in mind. And therefore, right, in this case, it's valid, but in the case with the new brother, the original division is not valid, and they need to redivide it again. Right, so now in a sale, right, so we had inheritance, we had partnership, now we have a sale, right? In a sale, both the buyer and the seller go into the sale not wanting it to be final till the very end, right? We want to make sure everything is divided the way it should be. And therefore, it's not going to be final till the end. But with inheritance, you want it to be done as soon as possible, and therefore there's a difference. Okay, Daf 107. Two brothers, again, are splitting the estate, and now a creditor of the father comes and takes the field from one of the brothers, right? If you remember, we learned previously that if the father owed somebody money, that creditor is allowed to come and take the field from the heirs, right, from the sons. So now they already divided up the land. So the creditor comes to Reuven and says, that land, I'm taking that field. So now what happens? So again, three different opinions. Opinion number one is they have to come back together, like let's say Reuven and Shimon come back together, and now they divide the property again because Reuven doesn't have anything now. So they have to redivide it. Or another opinion is Reuven lost it, right? Reuven happened to take, the southern field. The creditor happened to take that field. Reuven is out of luck, and Shimon has his field. So that's another opinion. A third opinion is that Reuven can take a quarter of the land from his brother, or maybe the value of that land. Okay, so now the Gemara is going to explain what this means. Okay, option number one was to redivide it. Why? Because again, they are heirs, and we're going to say that there is brera. If you remember, there's a concept called brera, which means retroactive designation, meaning at this moment, I'm going to say that I wanted something in particular to be the reality, but retroactively, meaning in the past. So what do we say here? That these brothers are supposed to inherit the entire estate. They each get half, right? Again, remember, let's say they divided it into two fields. So they each really had half ownership of each field. And then one brother said, you know what, you take my half in that field and I'll take your half in this field. And therefore, right, they each have the responsibility to pay the creditor, so that when he comes, it's as if he took both their fields. So now we come back together and we redivide. That's opinion number one. Opinion number two is, remember we said opinion number two is that Reuven loses out, right? Shimon is like, tough luck, he took your field, but I still have my field. Why? Because here, so this is an interesting way to understand when two brothers split their father's estate. The question is, again, are they seen as heirs, that they have equal what's the word? Not responsibility. They have an equal share in every part of the estate, or are they like people who are in doing business, right? Are they like buyers and sellers, right? And therefore, you took the northern field and I took the southern field, and now I lost the field, and that's my tough luck, right? So we don't say brera, we don't say that really you had a share in this land, and therefore you lose your portion because there was no guarantee when we split the estate, right? Or we're not sure. Are they inheritors or are they in a business together? And therefore, when we're not sure about something, when we have a doubt for monetary issues, one opinion is you just split it, right? So again, really, right, Reuven again wants half of Shimon's field. So right, he wants half. We're not sure if he deserves to get half, so we split it. Half of a half is a quarter, right? So therefore, the third opinion is that Reuven gets a quarter of Shimon's field. And the halacha is that Shimon actually has to give him some of his field, or maybe the halacha is that they redivide. Okay, now we're going to talk about judges who come and evaluate land for orphans, right? Again, the orphans just, generally when we say orphans, we mean minors, people, right, kids who inherit their father. So the judges are going to come and evaluate what the land is worth. Now, we have three judges. If you remember, in general, the smallest court is three judges. So three judges come And one says it's worth 100, and then two say it's worth 200. So we go according to the majority, and we say the land is worth 200. Let's say one of them says 100, one of them says 80, and one of them says 120. So we say that we're going to value the land at 100, because we'll explain why in a minute. Or we value it at 90, or we take the difference between the highest and the lowest, right? 80 and 120, and divide by 3, and then you add that to the lowest number. If you're not following, it's also okay, but it comes out to 93 and a third, right? So again, we have three opinions as to the value of the land: 80, 100, 120. The question is, how do we value the land? One option is we say 100, because that's the average, right, between 80, 100, and 120, so 100. Another option is 90. We'll explain why in a minute. And another option is 93 and a third, which we're going to explain in a minute. So let's go through each one. Again, 100 is, it's the average. 90 is, again, we have 80, 100, 120. So a person says it's going to be 90 because we say, look, 120 is totally off. So then we like knock out 120. We only have 80 and 100. We take the average and we say it's 90, right? They agree that it's around 100. Why do we say 93 and a third? Because maybe we say the first one and the next one are each a little bit off. Remember, we had 80 and we had 100. So they're each a little bit off. And therefore, we say 93 and a third. And here the Gemara says that the judges of the diaspora of the Gola agreed with the halacha of Shmuel and Karna in what we just explained. Okay, the next Mishnah tells us, let's say a person says, I'm going to sell you half a field. So what happens? They do something called mishamnim, which we'll explain what that means in a minute. So they do something, and then he takes half. Let's say he says, I'm going to sell you the southern half of my field. Again, mishamnim, and then he can take it. And another thing, when you sell a field, the seller needs to provide a space for a fence, a large ditch, and a small ditch. Each one is 3 tvachim and one is 6 tvachim. Okay, so now the Gemara is going to explain, what does this mean, mishamnim? It means that the buyer is always going to get the inferior part of the land. So now, what does that mean? Either it's the value or it's the actual type of land, right? So I don't know if you remember, but we learned previously that there's 3 types of land according to Jewish law, right? There is the superior land, there's average, and there's inferior. Now, there's always a machloket. Is it an objective, right, thing, meaning superior land is like, amazing for agriculture, average is average, and inferior means it's like really hard to grow things there? Or is it subjective? My best land is called superior. My average land is called average, and my lowest land is inferior. Right? But my inferior could be your superior, right? If it becomes subjective. So here we say that the buyer always gets the inferior part of the land. Again, does that mean he only gets, right, the lowest value land that you're selling, or the value? What does it mean, beinehem, right? It means between them, right? So maybe, remember he said, I'm going to sell you half a field. So maybe he gets half of every type of land, half of superior, half of average, half of inferior. Okay. And then the Gemara says, okay, and then let's say we split it based on the value, right? The value of, let's say, the southern half of my field. So I split that value, and therefore you can really give him any land, but you're going to give not the best land that you have, a lower quality land. And then the Gemara asks, why do you need to provide this space of a wide ditch and a narrow ditch? What are we talking about? So the Gemara says this is a way to prevent animals from jumping into your field, right? So there's like a large ditch, but if it's too big, so then the animals can like go, kind of cross it. So then you need a small ditch, and you do it so that the animals can't jump over the fence. Okay, that is the end of the 7th chapter. Now, we're going to begin the 8th chapter on Daf 108. And this chapter speaks about inheritance law. Okay, so just a quick review about inheritance law. There is a certain order of who inherits before the other, right? There's like a priority. The order is that when a father dies, the son inherits. If there are no sons, then the daughters inherit. If there are no daughters, it goes up to the father of the person who died, right? So it jumps up. If there's no father, right? So then it goes across to the father's heirs. And then again, then it'll go down. Basically, each time it goes up, across, and down. So we're going to go through each one of these steps and explain why. Another thing to recognize is that when we're talking about the father, we're talking about brothers, sons, it's only through the father's line, not through the mother's line. And we'll explain that. And it's always going to be that children come before the grandfather, right? So again, a person dies, it's going to go down before it goes up, right? And grandchildren will get it before the deceased brother, right? That's right. It goes down before it goes across or up. Okay, so now the Mishnah is again the Mishnah likes to give us. I don't want to say like the Mishnah likes to simplify things so that you can remember what the Mishnah is saying. But sometimes that simplification makes things a little bit more complicated. So this might be one of those cases. So I'll explain what the Mishnah says, and then we'll explain it better. Right? So the Mishnah says there are some people who inherit, and there's some people who bequeath. Right? Bequeath means to pass on their estate to another person. So some people can do both. They can inherit and they can pass the estate on to somebody else. Some can do one but not the other, and some can't do any one of those things. And now the Gemara explains, what does that mean? Okay, so case number one, sons and fathers, right? They inherit each other. Brothers inherit from the father. And all of these people, right, can inherit, right? They can receive the estate. They can also pass on the estate. Next case is that a man, it basically says a man to his mother, his wife, and his son's sisters. So what does that mean? A man inherits from all of these people, right? From his mother, from his wife, from the sons of his sisters, but they don't get from him, right? A mother doesn't get from her son, a wife doesn't get from her husband, and it's basically one way. The next case is a woman to her sons and her husband and the brothers of the mother, right? So again, this is the flip of what we just said, right? Again, a woman can pass on her estate to her husband, her son, or the brothers of her mother, but she does not inherit them. And then brothers from a mother, right? If they share the same mother but not the father, they don't inherit each other and they don't bequeath one to the other, right? They don't pass it on one to the other. Okay, so now, if that was not confusing, we are going to go through each case, and the Gemara is going to ask, why is that the rule? And many times it's going to be based on a verse, on a pasuk, but it depends on interpretation. So here the Gemara says, right, why is it this order? Right, again, it's based on verses, it's based on psukim. It says, the Torah tells us, you give the estate to the relative. It says she'er. She'er means the relative. So we say that you're going to give to the father before you give to the brothers. Remember, we said we go up before we go across. So now we said, it says hakarov, right? The closest relative gets first. So now we're going to have to define, what does it mean, the closest relative? So here the Gemara tells us the son is the primary heir before the deceased's brothers, right? Maybe it should go to the brothers before it goes to the son. So the Gemara says, no, the son is the primary heir. How do we know that? Because we know that the son comes in place of the father for certain Jewish laws, right? One is called Ye'ud. Ye'ud means that, let's say the father bought a Jewish maidservant. Generally, the idea was that the father would marry this maidservant, right? Because it would give her security. But if the father doesn't want to marry her, the next option would be the son, right? So we see that the son comes in the place of the father. Also with ancestral land, what's called sde achuzah, right? If you have family land, the son is allowed to redeem it just like the father is allowed to redeem it. So the Gemara says, really? Okay, but I can find a place in halacha where the brother comes in place of the person, right? We see that with yibum, right? When the brother dies, when a person dies, the brother needs to marry his wife. So we see that the brother is in the place of the person. And the Gemara says, well, that's true, but you don't do yibum if there's a son, right? If there's a child, you don't do yibum. That shows that the son trumps the brother. Okay, Daf 109. So we say, right, really the son is in place of the father in two cases, and the brother has only one. Therefore, the son is stronger. Therefore, the son is going to inherit the father. But then the Gemara says, wait a minute. Ancestral land, sde achuzah, is actually learned from yibum. So it shows that, it shows that the son can redeem the father's land. So maybe it like cancels each other out. So we say, okay, fine. So we agree that the son is primary, but let's say there's no son. So maybe the father should inherit before the daughter. Why does the daughter get to inherit? So the Gemara says, no, right? The daughter comes before the father. Again, person dies. If there's no son, we see if there's a daughter, she inherits before you give it to the father. Right? Why? Because we see that when isn't there yibum? When the person had a son or a daughter. So we see that the son and daughter are very important. Okay, maybe the father comes before the uncle and the brothers. And the Gemara says, yes, right? Because they're all related through the father. Therefore, if there's no son and no daughter, it goes up to the father. So he's the next closest relative. There's a verse, right? The verse is written out of order. Again, it says she'ero. We're using it to mean father, or maybe we learn father from a different verse, right? There's a different verse that says you should pass on the inheritance to the daughter, right? What does that mean, pass on? Right? When there's a daughter, give it to her instead of somebody else. Who is that? The father, right? So meaning if there's no daughter, then it goes to the father. Okay, the Gemara asks what each opinion learns from the other verse. She'er, again, we said meant, right, relative. So it also teaches that the husband inherits the wife, right? If the wife dies, the husband gets the estate. What do you do with pass on the inheritance? The he'evartem, you pass over. So instead of, right, it says instead of you should give it, it says you should pass it over to that person. So what does that mean? Right? Only one, right? You only do one transfer. Okay, right? And you transfer from one tribe to another. The only one who can transfer from one tribe to another is going to be the daughter, right? Because if the daughter marries somebody from a different tribe, when she inherits the land, then that's going to go to the husband who is from a different tribe, right? A different shevet. Okay, how do we know this? Right, so the verse says mishpachat av, right? The family of the father, right? So mishpachat av is called family, not the mishpacha of the mother, right? So we see that it only goes through the father's line and not the mother's line. And from here, since we were talking about dividing up land, and we brought up this idea of who comes from what tribe. So now the Gemara is going to talk about the stories at the end of the book of Judges, of Shoftim. At the end of the book of Judges, we actually have these horrible stories. One of them is called Pesel Micha. There's a man who has an idol, and he brings a priest to come and worship it. So what happens? It says that he has a Kohen, he's a priest, and the man is from the family of Yehuda, but he's also a Kohen or a Levi. So the question is, how does that work? Right? So maybe, right? So it says, maybe he's from the family of Yehuda and he's a Levi. So what's the case? Maybe it is that he is the father, his father is from Shevet Levi and his mother's from Shevet Yehuda, right? So this shows that family can be also from the mother. So the Gemara says, no, that's not the case. His name was Levi and his father is from Yehuda, right? So meaning he's from the tribe of Yehuda, but his name was Levi. Or no, his name was Yonatan, and he was a priest of the people of the tribe of Dan. But right, he behaved like Menashe. Right, he behaved right. Menashe was a terrible king, and worshipped idols, and therefore we say that it's as if he's the son of Menashe. Right, so therefore the pasuk says he's from the family of Yehuda, right? Because again, Menashe is from Menashe, the king was from the tribe of Judah, from Yehuda, and therefore the pasuk says he's from Yehuda, but really he's not. He behaved like them, but really he was from the tribe of Levi. Since we're talking about this, we have another case of Adoniah, right? Adoniah was a son of David, and he acted like Avshalom. Therefore, right, he rebelled against David. So because he rebelled against David, the pasuk says, right, the verse says, that they were related, but really they were not related. And therefore, the Gemara concludes that you should always cling to good people because it affects who you are. Therefore, you should always marry someone from a good family. Since we're talking about people marrying from different families, the Gemara tells us that Moshe married Yitro's daughter, right? And therefore they had Yehonatan, that's who we were just mentioning, Yonatan from Pesel Micha. Right, so again, what happens? Moshe marries basically a non-Jewish woman, right? Tzipora, who came from Yitro. So therefore they had a descendant who became a troublemaker. But Aaron married Aminadab's daughter, right? Aminadab is Nachshon's father. He was a good guy. Therefore, they had Pinchas, right, who was also a good guy, right? So basically, the Gemara says, check out your wife's family before you get married. Okay, and then here, since we mentioned Pinchas, who's Aaron's son, they say that, wait a minute, Pinchas, right, where did he come from, right? We say that basically Pinchas came from Yosef and from Yitro, right? He wasn't a grandson, but he was a descendant. And on Daf 110, right, it says, right, when you get married, you should check the brothers of the bride, because that's going to tell you how your wife is going to raise her children. Okay, back to our story of Pesel Micha. The tribe of Dan take Yonatan. Again, Yonatan is the Levi. He's the priest who's organizing with this idol. So the people of Dan take Yonatan to be their Levi. And then they say, right, don't you come from Moshe? Right, so you came from a Kohen. You came from Moshe, right? You're a descendant from Moshe, and you're worshiping idols. How could that be? So he says, no, don't worry. My grandfather Moshe taught me that you should serve avodah zarah. You should serve idols rather than taking charity from other people. Now, obviously, that's not what he meant, right? So he didn't realize that Moshe was saying not really to worship idols, rather you have to do, right, avodah, right, work that is zara, that's not common for you, right? You should do any job that is strange for you so that you can make money, so you don't have to go around asking for charity, right? We know that that is not a positive thing to have to do. And the Gemara tells us, don't worry about Yonatan, this Levi who does worship idols. They say, don't worry, because in the end, he actually did tshuva, right? And I think this is a beautiful daf. It actually, this daf 110 fell out on Yom Kippur, and I think it was a beautiful message that no matter what you do in life, right, God is always there to hear your repentance. So I thought it was very beautiful. Okay, back to inheritance. We say that the sons inherit the father before the daughters, or maybe they should split it, says the Gemara. And then the Gemara says, no. They don't split it, right? If there are sons, the sons get it. But if there aren't sons, then the daughters do get that, right? And this is something we learned from the daughters of Tzlofchad, right? Bnot Tzlofchad. This is in the book of Bamidbar in Numbers, right? So they come to Moshe and they say, listen, our father didn't have any sons. Why should we not get his inheritance? So he says, you're right. But this shows that the sons take precedence, right? The son and then the daughter, right? Again, the verse says, Hakarov Elav, the closest relative, right? The son is closer than the daughter. again, why is the son closer than the daughter? Because he comes in place of the father in those two laws, in Ye'ud, in marrying the maidservant, and Ste'achuzah, when he can redeem the family property. And then we say, wait, why don't we learn it from Yibum? Remember, we said if the person who died had a son or a daughter, so then you don't do Yibum. So there we see that the son and daughter are equal. And then we say, no, we learn it from the verse that says if he doesn't have a son, then it goes to the daughter. Right? It says, Benechem, right? Your sons, you give it to the sons and not the daughters. Though many times the word Benechem, right, means children, not sons. So the Gemara says, you're right. When we're talking about giving a blessing or bracha, right, Banim atem laHashem Elokechem, right, you are the children of God, right? It doesn't mean you're the sons of God. It means you're the children of God. But when we're talking about a law, if it says the word banim, it means sons. Okay. Hold on a second. Then we have the word achva, right, which means like together. We learn it from the sons of Yaakov, right? Right here we're talking about right, what does it mean brothers, right? What does it mean that they're brothers? They all have the same father, right? Again, all the children of Yaakov, they have different mothers, but they all have the same father. That's what makes them family. Therefore, inheritance only goes to brothers that are from the father, right? A mother's kids are not called mishpacha. Again, in a technical sense, obviously they are a mishpacha, they are a family, but legally it's not the same idea. Next, we learned that a man inherits his mother, right? So how do we know that? In Daf 111, there's a verse that teaches that the daughter inherits from the father and from the mother, right? And logically, we learn that if a daughter inherits or could inherit the father and the mother, so too it must be that the son also inherits the father and the mother. And when the mother dies, the son inherits her first. And then if there's no son, then it goes to the daughter, right? Or when the mother dies, maybe the daughter and the son split it. So the Gemara says there are two different ways to learn this concept. One is if you're learning sons because of the daughters, then you can't say that the sons are better than the daughters. You just learned it from the fact that the daughters inherit, and therefore you split it, or not, and just like the son comes before the daughter with the father, so too the son is going to come first with the mother's estate as well. Then there's a question, right? Does the son get double? Does the son get double when he's inheriting his mother? The Gemara says no. The double for the firstborn only is from the father, and this is based on a verse, and it's not from the mother, right? And since we're talking about the firstborn, right, we say the firstborn is from the father because the verse says Reshit Ono, his first child. Therefore, it's from the father and not from the mother. Next, so we have the man inheriting the mother. Now the Gemara the Mishnah said, a man inherits his wife, right? But not vice versa, right? She does not inherit him. So this again is based on a verse, but really the verse teaches that you give his inheritance to the closest relative, meaning the verse that they use, the simple reading or the clearer reading is that the closest relative inherits the person. Okay, right. We say a woman who inherits her father. Okay, so this goes back to Bnot Tzlofchad, right? The daughters of Tzlofchad inherited land, but the people of their tribe were very concerned because if they married men from another tribe, then the land of Menashe's tribe is going to go to a different tribe. And therefore, the Torah teaches us that when a woman inherits her father, right, let's say she's an only child and there are no brothers, so then the woman is going to inherit her father. She is not allowed to marry someone from another tribe, right? Because again, we don't want the estate to go to another tribe. And this, of course, proves that the husband inherits the wife. Otherwise, why would it matter who she marries? Okay, last daf 112. We have a case of two people in Tanakh who inherited their wives. And the Gemara brings it as cases of the sons having land that their fathers didn't own. How could it be that they have land that their fathers didn't own before that? It must be that they inherited it from their wives. And then if you look at the Gemara on daf 112, it actually brings a lot of proof texts, actually 5 different proofs. So the question is, why do we need so many proofs, right? Because maybe the first one is just teaching us that the son inherits the mother, right? Not necessarily from the wife. And maybe all the verses teach that the sons inherit right? They inherit from the mother and not the wife. And therefore, we have to bring more proofs that the husband actually inherits the wife. Maybe the son bought the land, right? Who said he inherited it? Maybe he bought the land. The Gemara says, no, that doesn't make sense because if the son bought the land, he's not going to bury his father on that land because if you remember, all land goes back to the original owners in Yovel, right? In the Jubilee year. Every 50 years, all the land goes back to their ancestral owners. And therefore, it wouldn't be that a son would bury his father on land that he bought and is going to go back in 39 years, in 49 years, right? Whatever, up to 50 years. So there's no way that that would be the case. Okay, we said that the mother's estate is transferred to the husband, and then it would go to the daughter who needs to then marry within the same tribe. Again, if she's the only child, so then she has to marry someone within the same tribe, right? Because again, if not, the mother's land is also going to be transferred to another tribe. So now the Gemara says maybe a woman needs to marry someone whose father is from the same tribe as her father and whose mother is the same tribe as her mother, or maybe the opposite, right, whose father is from the mother's tribe and whose mother is from the father's tribe. And then we say, no, that's not what the verse was saying. She just has to marry someone who's from the same tribe as her parents. A woman needs to marry, again, someone from her shevet, from her tribe, if she's going to inherit. And the verse teaches how the estate gets transferred through the son and through the husband, right? There are 2 different verses. Each one has the word ish, right? Ish means man, but we don't know if the man is the husband or the man is the son. And therefore we say, it must be, right, one is for one and one is for the other. And with that, we are going to end today's daf. Be'ezrat Hashem, we will meet again next week on Tuesday. So I want to wish everyone a Chag Sameach, a wonderful and meaningful Sukkot. And we have a few minutes, so if anybody has any questions or comments, I'm happy to hear any of those things. Yes.
One word. Yevamot. This sounds just like
Excellent. Exactly. Exactly. This is very reminiscent of Yevamot. Look how you guys are Talmud scholars.
Oh, yeah.
Talmud
Well,
you
we
learn.
know when we're in over our heads, too.
Yeah, exactly.
listen,
It sounds like it because it's so complicated and it's
Yeah.
beyond.
Yes. Listen, a wise person knows when we're in over our heads. So, we just have to, try to understand as much as possible.
You know what I think would really be helpful? I don't know what next year brings, but if we do this all over again, God willing, I think we need more visuals, pictures.
Yes. So we did have that in Yevamot.
I know, and that helped a lot.
Yes. You make a good point. I would love to have pictures. Maybe I'll look up if I can find some pictures for these relationships of who inherits who. And Bli Neder, I'll bring it for next week.
Oh,
That's a great idea.
That's a great.
I didn't see anything, but I'll look harder.
Thank you
for
so
next
much.
week.
We know you're very busy, so
I know.
don't stress over it.
I'm not going to stress, but I do appreciate a good visual. So I agree that would be very good. So you know what, I'm actually going to write a note to myself to see if I can find like a chart or something for next class. Yes, find visual.
There were other visuals in other Masechtot as well, but
yes, I didn't see for this, but I'm going to look a little bit more. Yes. Any other questions or comments?
I can't wait till the sukkahs are all up. They're probably up by now. I have to go to the Chabad house and see. This is one of my favorite holidays.
Wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
I love it.
Okay. Well, we should
thank
all
you
have
so much.
a wonderful holiday. It should be enjoyable. It should be festive, and we should only hear good news.
Amen.
Wishing
Amen.
everyone a
Sameach.
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 Thank you
Bye-bye.
very much for your wonderful